Jack settled into the familiar comfort of his home, the soft hum of the air conditioner filling the living room as he sipped his evening coffee. From the large window overlooking the street, he watched the last rays of sun fade behind the neatly trimmed hedges and uniform houses of the neighborhood. To anyone passing by, this community looked perfect. Clean sidewalks, children riding bikes, and friendly neighbors chatting over fences. But Jack, with years of Delta Force training behind him, noticed subtleties others overlooked. It wasn't just the way the mailboxes were lined up perfectly or the pristine lawns. There was an undercurrent, a tension woven into the daily rhythm of the neighborhood. Certain families seemed jumpy, glancing over their shoulders more than necessary. Strangers occasionally appeared at odd hours, and cars would slowly drive past, almost lingering before disappearing down side streets. Jack didn't jump to conclusions, but instinct whispered that these patterns weren't coincidental. Laura, his wife of 8 years, joined him in the living room carrying a small tray of cookies. She placed it on the coffee table, smiling. "You've been staring at the street for the last 10 minutes. What's going on in your head?" Jack smiled faintly, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. "Just noticing the usual neighborhood life," he said, "except some things aren't quite usual." Laura frowned slightly. She trusted Jack, especially when he spoke with the quiet confidence that came from a lifetime of experience, but she had always preferred to focus on the lighter side of life. "You mean like the HOA notices about grass height again?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Jack chuckled, shaking his head. "No, nothing that minor. It's just, I've seen people and cars moving in ways that don't fit casual behavior. Nothing dangerous yet, but I like to be aware." She settled beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. "You worry too much. This neighborhood is supposed to be safe. Look at all the families out there." Jack's eyes lingered on the street. A group of children chased each other on bicycles, laughter echoing through the evening air. Across the street, a man was trimming his hedge with military precision. Everything looked idyllic, yet Jack's trained eye picked up anomalies. A black motorcycle parked for hours on a side street, its engine cold but freshly polished. A neighbor leaving late at night, glancing back multiple times. Small, deliberate patterns in the way people moved that suggested observation rather than chance. He knew from experience that appearances could be deceiving. A quiet street did not automatically equal safety. One of the lessons of his past missions had been to trust instinct while analyzing facts. Something was simmering beneath the surface here, and he intended to uncover it before it became a problem. As darkness settled over the neighborhood, Jack walked to the front porch and leaned on the railing. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. A group of motorcycles rolled slowly past, engines low and throaty. They didn't wave, didn't acknowledge anyone. They simply observed, their headlights glinting off the polished metal of their bikes. Jack's grip tightened slightly on the railing. Laura joined him on the porch, sensing the tension in his posture. "Motorcycles again?" she whispered. Jack nodded. "They're just riding for now, but that kind of behavior is deliberate. It's a message or a test." Laura shivered slightly, the unease of the situation creeping in. "Do you think the HOA has something to do with this?" Jack's expression remained unreadable. "I don't know yet, but something tells me there's more to this neighborhood than meets the eye, and if it comes to danger, we'll be ready." For the rest of the evening, Jack and Laura went through the motions of dinner and nightly routines, but the quiet hum of the neighborhood now carried a different weight. Each sound, each shadow, seemed layered with meaning. Jack went to bed with the curtains drawn and an eye on the street outside. His instincts told him that the peace of this neighborhood was fragile, and the real story, the part that could threaten his family, was only beginning to emerge. And he intended to meet it head-on, with every skill he had honed in years of service. The next morning, the neighborhood seemed calm again, bathed in sunlight that made every house look picture-perfect. Jack, however, didn't let the serene atmosphere fool him. He had spent the night reviewing every small detail: the black motorcycle parked down the street, the way certain neighbors had glanced toward his house, and the faint traces of hurried footsteps near the perimeter of his property. Nothing in Jack's experience suggested these were harmless coincidences. Laura was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. "You didn't sleep well," she observed, pouring 2 mugs. Jack took a sip, nodding. Something isn't right, he admitted. And it's not just the motorcycles last night. The HOA's actions are getting more aggressive. Laura frowned. You mean like their notices and fines? Jack shook his head. More subtle than that. Small intimidation tactics, notes on doors, strange deliveries, people watching. It's like someone is testing boundaries, trying to see how far they can push residents. Laura paused, placing a hand on his arm. Do you think it's dangerous? Jack met her gaze, his tone calm but firm. I don't know yet, but I'll be ready. I always am. After breakfast, Jack stepped outside, surveying the neighborhood. The HOA office, a modest building near the entrance, looked innocuous, but Jack had a sense that appearances were misleading. He noticed the president, a tall man with a polished demeanor, speaking quietly with two other board members near the entrance. Their body language suggested a private conversation, and Jack instinctively knew they were discussing more than garden rules or parking policies. Over the next few days, Jack observed patterns that confirmed his suspicions. Notes appeared on doors, warning about minor infractions but written in a tone that suggested something darker. Certain residents were acting unusually cautious, avoiding conversations and keeping their windows shut even on sunny days. Jack quietly recorded these events, cataloging every detail with meticulous care. One afternoon, while jogging along the perimeter of his property, Jack noticed a delivery van parked suspiciously on a side street. The driver glanced around nervously before entering a house he didn't appear to own. Jack's instincts told him that the van wasn't making ordinary deliveries. It was a surveillance operation. He memorized the license plate, vehicle make, and even the driver's mannerisms. Later, he would check public records to see if the van was associated with the HOA or any known groups in the area. Laura noticed his heightened vigilance and couldn't help but feel uneasy. Jack, I appreciate your concern, but do you think you might be overanalyzing things? She asked gently one evening as they sat on the porch. Jack shook his head slowly. I've learned to trust instincts, he said. Every detail matters. People overlook small signs until it's too late. I won't let that happen here. That night, as darkness fell, Jack spotted the familiar group of bikers from before. They rode slowly through the streets, headlights dim, observing houses with careful attention. This time they lingered near the HOA office, parking just out of immediate view. Jack's mind worked quickly. He noted their numbers, their positions, and the way they split into smaller groups. They weren't merely passing through. They were watching, waiting, testing. Jack realized the HOA might be using the bikers as a form of intimidation, a silent message to the residents who questioned the rules. If this was the case, it was only a matter of time before the situation escalated. He knew that patience and preparation were crucial. Acting too soon could trigger unnecessary confrontation, but doing nothing could put Laura and other residents at risk. He spent the remainder of the evening setting small precautions around the house. Motion-activated lights, strategic observation points, and minor deterrents, all designed to give him advance notice if someone tried to approach. It was subtle, almost invisible, but effective. Laura watched him work silently, a mix of admiration and concern in her eyes. As they went to bed, Jack remained alert, listening to the faint hum of the neighborhood outside. The calm was temporary. The tension was building, and he knew that the HOA's hidden agenda would soon become impossible to ignore. For now, observation and preparation were his tools, and Jack intended to use them wisely. Something was coming, and when it did, he would be ready. The morning sunlight did little to ease the tension that had settled over Jack. Over the past few days, the strange patterns had only intensified. The motorcycles had become a regular presence in the neighborhood, often circling slowly in the late afternoons. Today, however, Jack noticed something different. One of the bikers lingered near the corner of his street, standing beside his bike as if studying the houses. The man wore a dark leather jacket, and though he didn't move aggressively, his watchful eyes made it clear he was no ordinary visitor. Laura poured herself a cup of coffee, glancing nervously toward the window. "You've been watching them for the last 10 minutes," she said softly. "Do you think they're dangerous?" Jack shook his head, keeping his tone calm. "It's too early to tell, but they're testing boundaries. They want to see how people react. That much is obvious." Laura frowned, clearly uncomfortable with the thought. "I don't like it," she admitted. "I feel like we're being watched." Jack placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We are, but that's not a problem we can't handle. I've dealt with worse. For now, we observe, we prepare, and we stay aware." By mid-morning, Jack had already mapped out potential escape routes and safe zones around the property. He knew the bikers would eventually make their intentions more obvious, but he also understood the value of patience. A reckless move could provoke them, and he wasn't about to give them an advantage. The first real confrontation came that afternoon. Jack was in the garage, checking the alignment of a security camera, when he heard the unmistakable roar of engines. Laura peeked through the window just in time to see 3 motorcycles pull up near the cul-de-sac. The riders dismounted and began walking toward the houses, speaking in low tones, their eyes scanning each property. Jack motioned for Laura to stay inside. His mind worked quickly, analyzing the bikers' formation and their possible intentions. Each step they took was deliberate, almost synchronized. They weren't here by accident. They were on a mission, whatever that mission might be. From his vantage point, Jack observed how they moved. One biker approached the Johnsons' house, tapping on the door before stepping back and giving a signal. Another circled the corner of the street, looking directly at several homes, including Jack's. The third stayed near the motorcycles, keeping watch. Jack noted their coordination. It was clear these weren't random troublemakers. They were organized, likely acting on someone else's instructions. Jack decided it was time to assert control over his environment. He didn't move aggressively, but he subtly positioned himself where he could observe without being seen. Using his knowledge of tactical awareness, he noted points of vulnerability and potential advantage. Every window, every doorway, every street corner became part of his mental map. Laura, sensing his tension, whispered, "Are we going to be okay?" Jack gave her a small, calm smile. "We will. I just need to understand what we're dealing with first." Over the next hour, the bikers lingered, testing reactions. They knocked on doors, circled the neighborhood, and occasionally gestured toward one another. Jack recognized these actions as a form of intimidation, silent, psychological, designed to unsettle and provoke fear. But instead of reacting impulsively, he took notes, cataloging their methods, strengths, and weaknesses. Finally, after a tense period, the bikers returned to their motorcycles and rode off, leaving the neighborhood quiet once more. Jack exhaled slowly, tension leaving his shoulders only slightly. He knew this was only the beginning. Laura joined him on the porch, her voice trembling slightly. "They're not just playing around, this feels serious." Jack nodded, his gaze following the empty street. "It is serious, but we have time to prepare, time to stay ahead. For now, we observe, we document, and we protect our home. That's what matters." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack went through the routines he had already established, checking cameras, securing doors, and ensuring that every potential entry point was accounted for. Laura watched him, a mix of concern and admiration in her eyes. He moved with a quiet confidence that only years of experience could bring, calm yet alert, ready for whatever came next. The quiet neighborhood seemed peaceful again, but Jack knew the tension was far from over. The biker's visit was only a warning, a small glimpse of the danger that lay ahead, and Jack, prepared as always, was ready to meet it head-on. The night had fallen over the neighborhood, leaving the streets quiet and bathed in the pale glow of streetlights. Inside their home, Jack and Laura were finishing dinner, the aroma of pasta still lingering in the air. Despite the comfort of home, an underlying tension remained. Jack had spent the past days observing, preparing, and analyzing. Tonight, he knew, might bring a test of everything he had prepared for. Laura glanced toward the window, the unease in her eyes mirroring his own awareness. "Do you really think they'll come here?" she asked quietly. Jack didn't respond immediately. He had already noted the bikers' patterns and behavior, calculating probabilities and anticipating moves. He had also reinforced points of access around the house, subtle precautions that would alert him if anyone approached without needing to be seen. He finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "It's possible. They're trying to intimidate, and tonight could be their first serious attempt. But we're ready." Outside, the hum of an engine approached, low and deliberate. Jack moved to the window, peering into the darkness. 3 motorcycles appeared at the end of the street, their headlights dimmed but precise in their direction. The bikers slowed as they reached Jack's property, dismounting in a controlled, synchronized manner. Jack motioned for Laura to stay behind him as he moved to a vantage point that gave him a clear view of the front and side yards. He knew the terrain intimately now. Every fence, every tree, every shadow had been accounted for. The bikers approached the house with calculated steps, clearly testing the perimeter. One of them made a move toward the side gate, which Jack had reinforced with an inconspicuous alarm system he had installed days earlier. A faint click alerted Jack immediately. He sprang into action, not with anger but with precision and planning. Using shadows and his knowledge of the layout, he positioned himself between the intruder and any possible access to the house. The biker paused, sensing movement, but couldn't identify Jack's exact location. Laura's voice trembled slightly from the living room. "Jack, what's happening?" "Stay calm, don't come out," Jack replied. His eyes never left the approaching intruders. He had prepared for this, not through brute force, but through clever positioning, control of the environment, and anticipation. Every movement of the bikers was predictable to him now. As the intruder tried to maneuver around the side of the house, he tripped over a small, strategically placed obstacle, causing a loud clang that echoed into the night. Jack used the distraction to step into the open briefly, just enough to reveal his presence and assert control. The biker froze, uncertainty flashing across his face. The other 2 bikers hesitated, glancing at each other. Their coordination faltered, their intimidation tactics losing effectiveness against a calculated and prepared opponent. Jack didn't move aggressively. He let his awareness and positioning do the work. Each step he took was designed to maintain control and prevent escalation while signaling that the situation was firmly under his command. Finally, recognizing the futility of advancing further without significant risk, the bikers retreated, exchanging low words before mounting their motorcycles. Jack watched until their taillights disappeared down the street. The danger was temporarily neutralized, but he knew this was only a beginning. Laura came to his side, her relief mixed with lingering fear. "That was terrifying," she whispered. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and calm. "It's over for now. They were testing us and they failed, but this shows exactly what we're dealing with. Preparation and strategy matter more than reaction." That night, Jack took additional precautions, checking security cameras, ensuring all entry points were reinforced, and documenting every detail of the encounter. Laura watched him move with quiet admiration, recognizing the combination of skill, experience, and calm judgment that kept them safe. The neighborhood returned to silence, but Jack remained alert, aware that the biker's visit was a warning and that the HOA's involvement likely ran deeper than he had suspected. One thing was certain. He was ready for whatever came next, and nothing would catch him off guard. The first real test had come, and Jack had passed it. But the story was far from over, and the true challenge was still ahead. The morning after the attempted intrusion, Jack rose early, his mind already moving through a careful sequence of plans. The encounter had been a warning, a clear signal that the HOA was willing to use others to enforce their agenda. He knew that the bikers' retreat was only temporary and that their next move would be bolder. This time, Jack resolved, he would not wait for them to act first. Laura noticed his heightened focus as he moved about the house with quiet efficiency. "You didn't sleep much last night," she observed, concern softening her tone. Jack paused for a moment, glancing at her. "I stayed alert. I need to understand every angle. Knowledge is the first step toward control." Over breakfast, Jack reviewed the information he had gathered. The bikers' numbers, their movement patterns, and the subtle signs of coordination with the HOA. Each detail, however minor, helped him anticipate possible scenarios. Jack made mental notes of weak points in the neighborhood layout and potential areas where they could approach the house unnoticed. Every observation became a tool, every action a piece of preparation. By mid-morning, he began implementing subtle defenses around the property. Motion sensors, strategically placed lights, and small obstacles were positioned to alert him to any movement near the house. These measures were designed to be unobtrusive, maintaining the appearance of normalcy while providing advanced warning. Jack knew the value of anticipation over confrontation. The goal was safety without unnecessary escalation. Laura watched him quietly, her admiration mingling with lingering unease. "You make it seem so simple," she said softly, "but I can see how serious this is." Jack smiled faintly. "It's simple because preparation works. Panic never does. Stay aware, stay calm, and the rest falls into place." As the day progressed, Jack also focused on gathering information beyond his immediate surroundings. He began noting the comings and goings of HOA members, their schedules and interactions with the neighborhood. Small details, the timing of deliveries, casual conversations, patterns in meetings, revealed more than they appeared to on the surface. Jack suspected that the HOA was coordinating the bikers' visits, and he needed confirmation before taking further action. In the afternoon, he set up discreet surveillance points, using cameras and reflective surfaces to monitor streets and entrances without alerting anyone. He cataloged every vehicle, every unfamiliar face, and every suspicious movement. The bikers, predictable in their behavior, were likely to return to the same areas. Jack's goal was to understand them fully before confronting them, ensuring he retained the advantage. Laura joined him in reviewing some of the footage, her eyes wide at the precision with which Jack had observed the neighborhood. "I can't believe you noticed all this," she said. "I would have missed it completely." Jack nodded. "Observation is as important as action. Knowing what's coming allows us to be prepared instead of reacting blindly. That's the difference between success and failure." As evening fell, the neighborhood became quiet once more. Jack noticed the familiar hum of engines in the distance. The bikers were on the move again. He studied their approach carefully, noting changes in speed, formation, and position. They seemed more cautious this time, aware that someone was prepared to counter their moves. Jack decided not to confront them directly just yet. Instead, he used the opportunity to further refine his understanding of their behavior. Every movement they made was cataloged, every pattern recorded. By the time the bikers disappeared into the distance, Jack had compiled a detailed mental map of their approach strategies, likely escape routes, and potential weaknesses. That night, as Jack and Laura settled into their home, the sense of vigilance remained. The first attempt had been thwarted, but the preparation was only beginning. Jack reviewed his plans for various scenarios, anticipating potential threats and ensuring that Laura's safety was always the priority. He reflected quietly, understanding that the bikers' intimidation was only one layer of the challenge. The HOA's involvement suggested a larger scheme, one that required patience, strategy, and precise action. For Jack, preparation was the first offensive step, observing, planning, and controlling the situation before it escalated further. In the quiet of the night, Jack felt a familiar calm settle over him. The danger was real, but he was ready. And when the next move came, he would meet it with the same careful strategy that had guided him through every challenge in his life. The following days passed in a tense rhythm for Jack. Each morning, he walked the perimeter of the property, observing, analyzing, and refining his plans. The attempted intrusion had taught him much about the bikers' methods, their coordination, their timing, their patterns of intimidation. Now it was time to move from preparation to subtle control. Laura noticed the quiet intensity in Jack's demeanor. "You're always watching," she said one evening as they sat on the porch. "I can see it in the way you move. Is it safe for us to even be outside?" Jack smiled reassuringly. "We're safe, Laura. Watching doesn't mean we're vulnerable. It means we're ready." Jack began creating a controlled environment for the inevitable next encounter. He rearranged lights, installed subtle cameras, and prepared hidden observation points around the house. Each adjustment was small, almost invisible, but strategically placed to give him complete awareness of the surroundings. He also began mapping the routes the bikers would most likely take, noting alternative approaches and potential weak spots. But Jack's preparation wasn't limited to physical security. He quietly gathered information about the HOA and its members. Meetings, schedules, and interactions revealed a web of influence that explained the bikers' presence. Small conversations, public records, and casual observations painted a picture of coordination between the HOA and the group of intruders. Jack cataloged every detail meticulously, knowing that knowledge would provide leverage when the time came. One evening, the familiar sound of engines broke the neighborhood's calm. The bikers were approaching, but this time, Jack noticed a difference. They were more deliberate, moving cautiously, almost testing the boundaries without engaging. He observed from a hidden vantage point, cataloging their formation and behavior. Every step they took, every hesitation, reinforced his understanding of their methods. Jack realized that the bikers' intimidation relied heavily on unpredictability. By remaining calm, prepared, and strategically positioned, he could turn their advantage against them. He decided to orchestrate a controlled confrontation, a situation in which he could observe, anticipate, and neutralize their attempts without escalating conflict unnecessarily. He began planning subtle psychological tactics as well. Signs of alertness, strategically positioned shadows, and careful movements created the impression that the house was more fortified than it appeared. Jack understood that intimidation could be countered by controlled demonstration of skill and awareness. He wanted the bikers to recognize that any aggression would be ineffective. Laura watched Jack implement these measures, impressed by the careful balance of strategy and practicality. "It's incredible," she said softly. "You're like a step ahead of them before they even know what they're doing." Jack nodded. "That's exactly what they think. The goal isn't confrontation, it's control. If we can maintain calm and awareness, we dictate the situation. They have to react to us, not the other way around." Over the next few nights, Jack refined his plans. He practiced subtle movements, ensured observation points were concealed, and adjusted lighting to manipulate visibility. Every detail was calculated, every possible scenario accounted for. The bikers, unaware of the extent of his preparation, continued their patrols, unknowingly feeding him information about their strategies. Jack also made discreet contact with a few neighbors he trusted, sharing general advice without revealing too much. He encouraged vigilance, observation, and calm, ensuring that the community remained alert while avoiding panic. Slowly, the network of awareness extended beyond his property, creating an invisible safety net around his home. Finally, the night of the controlled confrontation arrived. Jack observed the bikers approaching once more, confident in his knowledge of their patterns and his preparations. Every camera, every obstacle, and every tactic was ready. His plan was simple: allow the bikers to test their approach, document their behavior, and maintain complete control of the environment. The scene was set. The tension in the neighborhood was palpable, but Jack remained calm. He had anticipated every move, calculated every possibility, and prepared for the unknown. The bikers' intimidation tactics would meet a disciplined, strategic response, a demonstration that the home they sought to unsettle was fortified not by walls alone, but by intelligence, planning, and unwavering vigilance. As the bikers drew near, Jack's eyes scanned the street, his mind sharp, ready, and focused. He was no longer merely defending his home. He was orchestrating the encounter, controlling the situation with precision. The next chapter in the confrontation was about to unfold, and Jack was prepared to meet it with the full measure of his skill. The night was quiet, almost unnaturally so. Jack stood near the side of his house, hidden in shadow, eyes scanning the street with the precision of a trained observer. He had prepared for this moment for days. Every contingency, every angle, every potential move of the bikers had been considered. Tonight would be the decisive test. From a distance, the familiar hum of engines broke the stillness. 3 motorcycles approached, moving cautiously, their riders clearly aware that someone was ready. Jack noted the way they slowed near the cul-de-sac, how they split slightly to cover more ground, and how each rider scanned the neighborhood with careful attention. They were confident but wary, and Jack knew exactly why. Laura watched from inside, her heart pounding but trusting Jack implicitly. She could see the calm determination in his posture, the calculated way he moved to his vantage points. Unlike the bikers, Jack had the advantage of preparation, knowledge, and control of the environment. The first biker attempted to approach the side gate, testing the perimeter. Jack, hidden behind the hedge, allowed the man to take a few steps before triggering a subtle alert, a soft click from the motion sensor that caused a small light to flick on nearby. The biker froze, uncertainty flashing across his face. Jack stepped out, fully visible this time, his presence calm but commanding. "You're trespassing," he said in a low, steady voice. "Leave now and no one gets hurt." The bikers exchanged glances, hesitation evident. Their coordinated confidence had been disrupted. Jack had taken control of the environment and the psychological battle. Every move he made reinforced that the advantage now lay with him. One biker tried to circle around, but Jack had anticipated this. He moved silently to another vantage point, positioning himself in a way that blocked the biker's path while maintaining cover. The man faltered, realizing that any aggressive move would be met with immediate, effective counteraction. The remaining bikers stayed close to their motorcycles, hesitant. Jack's calm, precise movements, combined with his complete awareness of their positions, created the impression of overwhelming control. It wasn't brute strength or aggression. It was intelligence, strategy, and the ability to remain several steps ahead. Recognizing the futility of their approach, the bikers began to retreat, exchanging low words. One hesitated as if to protest, but Jack's unwavering gaze and steady stance conveyed a clear message. Any further aggression would fail. The bikers mounted their motorcycles and disappeared into the night, leaving the neighborhood quiet once more. Jack didn't relax immediately. He remained alert, ensuring that all possible exit routes were monitored. Laura joined him outside, her relief evident but tempered by the knowledge of what could have happened. "That was intense," she said softly. Jack nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "It's over for now, but this confirmed a few things. They're coordinated and the HOA is likely behind their actions. We'll need to address that next." The following days were spent gathering more evidence. Jack discreetly documented interactions between the bikers and HOA members, noting schedules, vehicles, and conversations. The neighborhood had been shaken, but Jack's careful planning and calm decisiveness ensured that no one was harmed. Finally, Jack confronted the HOA president directly, armed not with aggression but with information. He presented evidence of the intimidation, the coordination with the bikers, and the disruption caused to the neighborhood. The president's confident facade faltered as Jack detailed the observations, patterns, and recordings he had meticulously collected. The confrontation ended with the HOA president agreeing to cease all intimidating actions, knowing that Jack's preparedness made any further attempts futile. The bikers, too, were effectively neutralized, their actions exposed and deterred. The neighborhood began to regain a sense of calm, with residents aware that the threats had been addressed decisively. Jack and Laura finally allowed themselves a moment of quiet reflection. The ordeal had tested their vigilance, patience, and resilience, but they had emerged stronger and safer. Jack's calm, strategic approach had prevented harm, restored control, and exposed the true sources of intimidation. As they stood on the porch, watching the neighborhood return to normal, Jack spoke softly. "The danger is gone for now, but this proves that preparation, strategy, and awareness always matter." Laura leaned into him, relief and gratitude evident. "I'm just glad you were ready. You kept us safe." Jack smiled, his mind already reflecting on the lessons learned. The neighborhood was calm again, the HOA's misdeeds exposed and the bikers neutralized. But Jack knew that vigilance was never-ending. For now, though, peace had returned, and this time it was earned. The morning sun poured over the neighborhood, bathing every house in warm light. The streets, once tense with uncertainty and shadows of intimidation, now appeared calm and inviting. Jack walked alongside Laura to the mailbox, a rare moment of serenity stretching between them. The threat of the bikers was gone, and the HOA's manipulative actions had been exposed, leaving the neighborhood to recover from the weeks of anxiety. Jack kept his eyes alert, scanning the surroundings as always, though the weight of imminent danger had lifted. He had spent countless hours observing, planning, and anticipating every possible scenario. That preparation had kept Laura safe and restored peace to the community. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to enjoy the quiet, knowing it was the result of diligence and strategy rather than mere luck. Laura looked up at him, a smile touching her lips. "It feels normal again," she said softly, "like we can finally breathe." Jack returned the smile, a quiet satisfaction in his gaze. It does, and it's because we stayed vigilant, stayed prepared. Calm, careful planning wins over chaos every time. Word of the bikers' failed intimidation spread quickly through the neighborhood. Residents who had been fearful found courage in the knowledge that the threat had been neutralized. Many approached Jack privately, thanking him for his diligence and composure. Some admitted they had been too afraid to question the HOA or notice the patterns, but Jack encouraged them to remain observant and aware, teaching that safety depended on community vigilance as much as individual preparation. The HOA, humiliated and exposed, faced scrutiny from other residents. Their influence waned as more homeowners demanded transparency and fair practices. Meetings were conducted openly, and the previously unchecked power of the HOA was curtailed. Jack's careful documentation and calm approach had made clear that intimidation tactics would no longer be tolerated. Jack and Laura also took time to reflect personally. They sat on their porch one evening, sipping tea, the neighborhood bathed in soft lamplight. "It's strange," Laura said, "how quickly fear can take over a place you thought was safe." Jack nodded, his eyes on the quiet street. Fear often grows in silence, but when you meet it with preparation and awareness, you take back control. That's what matters. That's how you keep people safe. With the immediate danger behind them, Jack also began working quietly with a few trusted neighbors to establish better community awareness. Subtle measures, like neighborhood watch schedules, lighting improvements, and communication channels, were introduced. The goal was to ensure that no individual or group could manipulate or intimidate residents again. Jack's approach was never about instilling fear, but about fostering responsibility, preparedness, and trust. Life slowly returned to normal. Children played outside again, neighbors chatted freely, and the streets were once more filled with laughter and the soft sounds of suburban life. Laura and Jack enjoyed the return to routine, appreciating the peace they had fought to secure. Their bond, tested under stress and danger, had grown stronger. Each small victory reinforced the importance of teamwork, strategy, and resilience. One evening, as the sun set behind the houses, Jack stood at the edge of his yard, observing the neighborhood with a calm, watchful eye. Not because he expected trouble, but because awareness was a habit, a lifelong skill. Laura joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. "We did it," she said quietly. "Yes," Jack replied, his voice calm and steady. "And we'll continue to keep it this way. Vigilance doesn't end, it evolves. But for now, this neighborhood is safe, and that's what matters." As the last light of day faded and the stars began to appear, the street was quiet, peaceful, and secure. The bikers were gone. The HOA's schemes had been exposed, and the residents had regained confidence in their community. Jack and Laura returned inside, locking doors and windows with a sense of satisfaction rather than fear. The story of threats, intimidation, and strategy had reached its conclusion. What remained was a community strengthened by experience, a couple bound closer by trust and resilience, and a lesson that careful planning, intelligence, and calm determination could overcome any challenge. Jack finally relaxed in his chair, looking at Laura across the room. "We're safe," he said simply. Laura smiled, reaching for his hand. "Yes, we are, and will stay that way." The neighborhood, once shadowed by fear, now thrived in peace, a testament to preparation, courage, and the quiet strength of those who refused to be intimidated. And for Jack and Laura, the future held the promise of calm, vigilance, and the certainty that they could face anything together. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next mystery on HOA Hunter Stories.